There are 29 head coaches in the Hall of Fame. 5 of them shouldn't be. And the voters, if they're being honest, already know it. 1 got fired 3 seasons after winning back-to-back championships. 1 went to 4 Super Bowls and lost every one of them. And one of them is Tony Dungy. Yeah, that Tony Dungy. The man whose defense won Tampa Bay's first Super Bowl the year after he left. That's where Canton's standard starts looking shaky. Because if these 5 belong in Canton, then what does Hall of Fame even mean? Number 1. Weeb Ewbank. 2 championships in Baltimore. 1 Super Bowl in New York. Canton eventually waved him through like the case was obvious. Here's what the plaque doesn't say. The Colts eventually fired him. 1958 championship. 1959 championship. Back to back. Then, 3 seasons later, after Baltimore went 7-7, the organization that hired him looked across the roster, looked at what they had built, and decided they could do better without him. Franchises don't usually move on from a coach with 2 recent championships unless they believe the roster has more in it than the man leading it. The Colts had recently won 2 championships with Ewbank and still decided the roster had more to give than he was getting out of it. The Colts understood something about Ewbank that the Hall of Fame voters, 2 decades later, either missed or chose to ignore. And the players who won those titles had Johnny Unitas at quarterback. Not just a good quarterback, the quarterback. The one the entire league couldn't solve for a decade. The one who redefined what the position was capable of. The 2-minute drill, the audible at the line, the idea that a quarterback could be the most dangerous weapon in football, not just the man handing it off. Defenses spent the better part of 10 years trying to catch up to what Unitas was doing, and most of them never got there. The Colts found Unitas after Pittsburgh had cut him. Ewbank built around him. There's a meaningful difference between those 2 things, and the Hall of Fame voters either didn't see it or didn't care. Then Baltimore let him go. He lands in New York, gets Joe Namath, Super Bowl III. The guarantee, the upset, the moment that rewired how the entire sport thought about itself. AFL legitimacy, player personality, the idea that an underdog could walk into the biggest game in football and say something about it 3 days before the ball was even kicked. The cultural weight of that game was enormous. It still is. And Ewbank's name is attached to all of it. His record with the Jets across 9 seasons, 71 wins, 77 losses, 6 ties. With Joe Namath, 9 seasons. One of the most talented and recognizable quarterbacks who ever played the game. A roster in New York that had genuine talent at multiple positions, and Ewbank finished under 500. Now, Namath wasn't healthy every year. That matters. But even with that caveat, 9 seasons under 500 with that kind of quarterback talent is not nothing. Mike Shanahan won 2 Super Bowls in Denver. Back to back. 1997, 1998. Here's the part voters skip past. 1998, Terrell Davis runs for over 2,000 yards. MVP season. 1999. 4 games in, Davis tears his ACL. Done for the year. Shanahan puts a 6th-round rookie nobody had heard of behind that same offensive line. Olandis Gary, over 1,100 yards. The year after that, Davis is gone again. Another rookie steps in, Mike Anderson, nearly 1,500 yards. Pro Bowl. 3 different running backs, 3,000-yard seasons. Same zone blocking scheme, same offensive line, same coach. That's not a star carrying a coach. That's a system that worked no matter who Shanahan put in the backfield. Now go back to Ewbank. 2 championships in Baltimore, with a quarterback the Colts found after Pittsburgh cut him and built the entire offense around. 9 seasons in New York, with a quarterback nearly as talented and a losing record. Take Unitas off those Colts teams. What's left? Take Terrell Davis off those Broncos teams, and the system still finds a 1,000-yard back the very next season. And the one after that. One of these coaches needed a generational quarterback to look like a genius. The other built something that worked with whoever he handed the ball to. Shanahan isn't in Canton. Ewbank is. Number 2. Bud Grant. 4 Super Bowls. 0 wins. The voters saw 4 trips to the biggest stage in football and put him in Canton. To be fair, Grant's full pro football resume is bigger than Minnesota. He won 4 Grey Cups in Canada before he ever coached the Vikings. That matters. But if we're judging the NFL Hall of Fame case, the Super Bowl resume is still impossible to ignore. Here's what they were actually looking at. Carl Eller, Jim Marshall, Gary Larson were already there. Alan Page arrived the same year Grant did. So no, Grant didn't walk into an empty room. The defensive foundation was already forming before he ever ran a Vikings practice. The Purple People Eaters weren't some magic trick Grant invented from scratch. Grant deserves credit for steering it. He just shouldn't get full credit for creating it. Alan Page won the NFL MVP in 1971, the Defensive Player of the Year award, the most valuable player in the entire league. That isn't something a coach manufactures. That's a once-in-a-generation player doing things the scheme can only support, not create. Super Bowl IV. Kansas City out-schemed them before Grant's dynasty era even started. Len Dawson picked the defense apart with timing routes the Vikings had no answer for. The Chiefs came in as significant underdogs and won by 16 points. Super Bowl VIII. Miami physically dominated them. The Dolphins ran the ball 53 times. 53 rushing attempts against the defense that had spent the entire season making offenses look helpless. Larry Zonka ran for 145 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Vikings defense that terrorized the NFC all season got worn down and shoved aside by a team that decided to attack them on the ground and never stopped. Super Bowl IX. Pittsburgh held them to 6 points. 6. The steel curtain made Fran Tarkenton look trapped all afternoon. Chuck Noll's defense, a defense Grant's staff had an entire offseason to prepare for, made the Vikings offense completely unrecognizable. Super Bowl XI. Oakland ran the ball at will. 266 rushing yards. Clarence Davis, Pete Banaszak, Mark Van Eegen. The Raiders ran it at them from the opening drive, and the Vikings never adjusted. Not in the first half, not in the second half, not at any point during the game. 4 trips, 4 different opponents, 4 completely different kinds of loss. Rushing dominance, defensive dominance, schematic exposure, and pure outcoaching. Every single Super Bowl revealed a different thing the Vikings couldn't solve under Grant. If it were one bad matchup, one team that caught them at the wrong moment, you file it under bad luck and move on. 4 times, 4 different problems, 4 different failures to adjust. That's a pattern that belongs to the head coach. Then, 1983. Grant retires. The franchise moves on. 2 years pass. The roster ages. The dynasty window closes. He comes back in 1985. Goes 7-9. Retires again. Dan Reeves reached 4 Super Bowls as a head coach. 3 with Denver, 1 with Atlanta. Different conferences, different quarterbacks, different versions of the league. He also won 190 regular season games. That's more than Grant, more than Ewbank, more than Allen, more than Gillman. Yes, Reeves lost 4 Super Bowls too. That's the point. He never won the Super Bowl as a head coach. He's not in Canton. Grant lost 4 Super Bowls and still is. Number 3. George Allen. 705. That's George Allen's career winning percentage. Top handful in NFL history. 0 championships to show for it. Here's how he got those numbers. The future is now. That wasn't a slogan someone made up about Allen. It was his actual operating philosophy, and he said it out loud. Trade draft picks. First rounders, second rounders, picks years out. For proven veterans. Win now. Worry about later. Los Angeles Rams, 1966 to 1970. 5 seasons, 49 wins, 19 losses, 4 ties, 2 division titles, 2 playoff appearances, 2 first-round losses. 1967 to Green Bay, 1969 to Minnesota. Then the owner fires him. Despite the winning record, despite the division titles, the front office had seen enough of mortgage drafts and decided the math wasn't working anymore. 2 years later, Chuck Knox takes over that same Rams roster. 5 straight playoff appearances, 3 trips to the NFC Championship game. Knox never wins a Super Bowl either. Chuck Knox is not in Canton. But he went further than Allen ever did, with less draft capital than Allen left behind because Allen had already spent most of it. Washington, 1971. Same approach. Trade for veterans. Stack the roster with players already past their prime. The over-the-hill gang, and Allen wore that nickname like a badge. It worked. For one season. 1972. Washington reaches Super Bowl VII and loses 14-7 to Miami. The Dolphins finish that season 17-0. The only perfect season in NFL history, and it happened in the one Super Bowl Allen ever got to. 12 seasons, 2 franchises, a .705 winning percentage, and a playoff record that tells a completely different story. Allen went 2-7 in the postseason, 2 wins across his entire career. The regular season numbers say genius. The games that actually decided championships say something else. Chuck Knox finished 186, 147, and 1. 3 different franchises, Rams, Bills, Seahawks, taken to the playoffs. 7 trips, 3 conference championship games. No ring, not in Canton. Allen burned through draft picks to build win totals that couldn't survive January, lost the one Super Bowl he reached to the only team that never lost a game that year. He got to 1 Super Bowl and lost it to the only team in NFL history that finished a season without a single loss. And he still is. Number 4. Tony Dungy. 139 wins, 69 losses, 1 Super Bowl ring in 13 seasons as a head coach. Here's what was already on the roster before Dungy ever called the defensive front in Tampa. Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks, both drafted in 1995, both first-round picks, both already on the team before Dungy was hired in 1996. Dungy builds the Tampa 2 around them. The defense becomes the best in football. Sapp wins Defensive Player of the Year in 1999. And Tampa still doesn't get there. 1999. Dungy's best shot. NFC Championship game. St. Louis wins. 2001. One and done in the wild card round. Fired after the season. John Gruden takes over in 2002. Same defense. Sapp. Brooks. John Lynch. Rondé Barber. Dungy's defense. Dungy's scheme. Mostly Dungy's players. Super Bowl 37. Tampa wins. 48-21. The very next season. So which is it? If that defense was good enough to win a championship the year after Dungy left, what was missing the 6 years he was running it? Now, Indianapolis. 2002. Dungy walks into a building that already has Peyton Manning, drafted first overall in 1998, already has Marvin Harrison, already has Edgerrin James. Bill Polian's roster, built before Dungy got there. And for 4 straight years, the same thing happens every January. 2003. Lose the AFC Championship game to New England. 2004. Lose in the divisional round to New England. 2005. Lose in the divisional round to Pittsburgh. The Palomalu game, the one where the tackle that wasn't a fumble decided the season. Year after year. Elite regular season. Gone by the second week of the playoffs. Then, 2006. Super Bowl 41. Indianapolis beat Chicago 29-17. The Bears started Rex Grossman at quarterback that season. 1 ring. After 4 years of January exits against a Chicago offense that wasn't the problem for anyone else that year. Now look at John Gruden. 1 Super Bowl ring. 1 with a defense someone else built in his first year with that roster against his former team. Gruden's career record. Barely over 500. Gruden is not in Canton. Dungy inherited the defense that won Tampa's only ring without him, inherited the offense that finally won Indy's only ring with him, and he is. Number 5. Sid Gillman. 123 wins, 104 losses, 7 ties. 1. AFL Championship. No NFL title. No Super Bowl. Sid Gillman is one of the most important offensive minds football has ever had. That part isn't fake. You don't have to tear him down to make the argument. His passing game really did stretch the sport forward. His route spacing, vertical concepts, film study, and quarterback teaching changed how coaches thought about offense. The mythology is real. But mythology is not the same thing as results. And when you strip the story down to what actually happened on the field, Gillman's resume gets a lot thinner than people want to admit. He won one AFL championship with the Chargers in 1963. That was the peak. That was the banner. After that, no NFL title, no Super Bowl appearance, no championship run after 1963 that matched the size of his reputation. He retired, came back, retired again, and by the time he was in Houston, he was no longer the young revolutionary redefining the sport. He was a respected elder statesman, still brilliant, but far removed from the peak of his influence. A legendary mind, but not the driving force of a champion. Gillman's influence kept growing after his winning stopped. Coaches studied him. Assistants carried his ideas across the league. His concepts became part of football's bloodstream. The deep passing game, the route combinations, the spacing, the way quarterbacks were asked to attack leverage before the snap and punish it after the snap. He didn't just call plays, he changed the language. But now, put that next to Marty Schottenheimer. Marty didn't change the language of football. He didn't have a system named after him. He didn't become a playbook term. Nobody talks about Schottenheimer concepts. But everywhere he went, teams got better. Cleveland became a real AFC threat. Kansas City became relevant again. San Diego went from 4-12 to 14-2. That was Marty. No mythology, no coaching tree archaeology, just bad teams becoming serious. 200 regular season wins, 13 playoff appearances, 3 franchises taken to the postseason. And he's still not in Canton. Why? Because he never won the big one. Fine. Then apply that standard consistently. Sid Gillman finished 123, 104, and 7. One AFL championship, no NFL title, no Super Bowl. His case is built on influence. And the influence is real. But Marty won 200 games. He didn't just change ideas. He changed franchises. Marty gets punished because he couldn't finish in January. Gillman gets excused because his ideas aged well. That's the inconsistency. If Canton is about changing football, Gillman has a case. If Canton is about winning at the highest level, the case gets a lot weaker. But voters can't keep moving the line, depending on whose resume they're protecting. Unitas makes almost any coach look smarter in Baltimore. The Purple People Eaters were strong enough to make plenty of coaches look better than they were. Gruden's ring didn't erase Dungy's defense, but it complicated the mythology. The Rams were already trending up before Allen got there, and Chuck Knox took them further after he left. And Gillman's ideas became easier to defend once later coaches proved how much of modern football came from them. Mike Shanahan is still waiting outside. Dan Reeves is still waiting outside. Chuck Knox is still waiting outside. John Gruden is still waiting outside. Marty Schottenheimer never got the call. Because once someone gets in, they don't become the exception. They become the standard. And the names on that wall don't change. Drop it in the comments. Who's the most defensible? Who's the most indefensible? If you think I'm wrong about Grant or Dungy, make the case. I want to hear it. Subscribe if you're new. Every week. No filler, just the arguments the game actually deserves. See you in the next one.